Can you imagine anything more exotic than this? It's one of the many reasons why people come to Trengwainton from far and wide, even on days like this with the rain pouring down. They come and stand and stare, and that's all you can do. It's so incredible, the beauty of these huge flowers. It's called Magnolia Sargentiana robusta, a bit of a mouthful for such a beautiful tree. And it's one of those magnolias, the tree magnolias, which flower before the leaves, one of the early birds. This is absolutely typical of its kind, branching low, almost at ground level, broad and spreading, robust as the name suggests. And there are several kinds of tree magnolias which are found in the wild in the mountain forests of Asia. This one was found by that famous English plant hunter, Ernest Wilson. And he found it on a mountain called Huashan in Sichuan province in western China. And the amazing thing is, Wilson obviously collected this in seed. He never saw it himself flowering in the wild. Can you imagine finding a tree like this, collecting the seed, and then many years later, coming to a garden such as Trengwainton and seeing all these flowers? What a feather in the cap. Now there's another plant which Wilson collected, an evergreen climber, which is flowering on a wall nearby. Now, although the magnolia is only suitable for woodland gardens in the mild parts of the British Isles, Clematis armandii is hardly a hardy plant. It thrives best on warm walls such as this into the southern parts of the British Isles. It's grown for its evergreen foliage, leathery, large, bold, beautiful veins, and its flowers. In this particular form, they're white, but you can also have some which are pink tinted, and there's a good selection called apple blossom. Now, although this was yet another plant introduced by our friend Wilson, its name, Armandii, commemorates a French missionary, Armand David. And not only did he do his job well, his real job, he also spent a lot of time collecting the whole range of animals and birds, fish even, and plants. He was a great naturalist, in other words, and quite a number of plants are named after him. And I can't think of anything more beautiful, except perhaps the magnolia, to have named after me.
Anybody who's ever wielded a spade knows that gardening's some form of slavery. I just wonder how many gardeners really realise what they owe to the genuine slaves of this world. The fellows who heaved the barges and stowed the bales and worked the land on the great plantations in Africa and India and the Central Americas. Because it was the sweat from their brows which enabled the plantation owners to make the great profits which enabled them to retire back to Britain, to these southwestern warmer areas, and build great mansions and start to model the ground to provide gardens. They chose the southwest because they had thin blood and they liked the warm climate, but they also liked the opportunity to grow more exotic plants, the sort of things they'd often seen when they'd worked and lived abroad. Here at Trengwainton, we've got a marvelous example. It was built by the Rose Price family, who were Jamaican sugar planters. Tragically for them, their dream never really came true because slavery was abolished by an act of Parliament brought in by Wilberforce before they really got the place underway. And this gave the opportunity for the Bolitho family, a well-known family of Cornish tin smelters, to purchase the property. Fortunately for us, the Bolitho family were very, very keen gardeners, and successive generations have gradually improved and enriched the grounds here until we have this quite sensational garden that we can all come and see today.
Well, they say the sun smiles only on the righteous. Well, I won't claim to be that, but like most gardeners, I am an optimist. And look at this. No rain and the sun shining on us, and shining on this superb grouping. This is a marvellous example of what you can achieve by careful planning and planting. A bit of, in this case, Bolitho magic. We have rhododendron albrechtii. It's a member of the azalea section, deciduous, and in full flower, nice mallow purple effects. And this will be closely followed by this evergreen azalea. belong to the rhododendron obtusum group. It's already beginning to flower in patches, and during the next few weeks the whole sort of mound that it's formed will be transformed as the colour emerges. Another month's time, that rhododendron on the end there, that's Temple Bell, that has nice pink bell-shaped flowers, that will steal the scene. And then capping the whole group, at the back and above it, is one of the most interesting maples in gardens. That's Acer palmatum senkaki. It's known as the coral bark maple because, especially in winter, the young shoots are this beautiful sort of coral red coloration. As the young leaves come out, they take on sort of a tawny colour, and then in the autumn, sort of finish off the whole sort of show, the leaves turn to a beautiful yellow, sort of a tawny yellow, and the whole canopy, it sort of dominates the scene. You'll also see on those branches lichens. Now, those who live in towns and cities will probably wonder what lichens are, because lichens don't like pollution. They do like lots of rain, which is something we can rely on in Cornwall, and absolute purity of the air. Well, I mentioned purity of the air in Cornwall. Well, here's purity of flower, quite tremendous. Peter Horder, you've been head gardener at Trengwainton 13 years now.
Yes, that's right.
I believe we first met many, many years ago at Hilliers.
That's correct.
We were both first learning our plants. This is rhododendron arboreum.
It is indeed,
It's
yes.
one of the commonest of its kind in the gardens here, is it?
Yes, yes it is. This is a superb example of how well these so rhododendrons will so perform in so West Cornwall. And you can see, as well as the superb flower, we have very attractive underfoliage, which is sort of silvery, sort of buff.
Gosh, yes.
And the sort of colour range of the flower too is sort of very useful, as one sort of goes from sort of white through sort of pink to rosy pink and sort of deep red.
Yeah. It reminds me of, well, maybe 10 years ago, I was in Nepal in the spring, and we walked through forests of this rhododendron, but even so, I don't think I saw anything there to, or certainly not to excel this one, certainly match it maybe, but quite spectacular when you think we're in England, not in the Himalayas. And we're at this smaller growing one, not in flower yet.
This is one of the sweetly sort of scented sort of rhododendrons, so which are a feature here. We are so very fortunate that we can grow this out of doors.
It's a tender one.
Yes.
White flowers.
White, so very fragrant flowers.
Well, you can grow tender plants, and you can grow a few of the common trees to exceptional size, because I don't think I've ever seen a cryptomeria as big as that one.
No, it is huge, isn't it?
What happened to the top, Peter?
Well, because of wind sort of damage, we had to cut the top off. Unfortunately, this was the exposure of the plant.
Yeah. Well, according to that label, this is Cryptomeria japonica elegans.
Yes, this is a superb specimen, about some 90 years old.
Gosh me, well, I've never seen one with a trunk that size. It's a very popular conifer with
yes, it
a
is.
lot of gardeners, isn't it?
Yes,
this?
it's sort of sold in sort of garden centres.
Yeah. I had a neighbour at my previous house who bought one of these, and he's very pleased with it. It was a young plant about 2 feet high, but only one problem. His garden's the size of a pocket handkerchief. Now, either that man who survives that long, he's going to be very disappointed and amazed when he gets a tree like this.
Yes, indeed.
What about the foliage? Do you get that colour?
The foliage turns a lovely sort of bronze in the autumn.
Already, very much like the bark on the
bark,
trunk.
yes.
What does this
Very
number
attractive.
mean?
That is a very sort of valuable scheme so by the National Trust to sort of catalogue all their woody plants.
Do you have them on computer or something?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Don't you think the collection is as large as this one and as complex, that's a very good idea?
Yes, it will be very useful for the
Check
future.
on everything you've got, in fact.
This is so, yes.
And you add new plants as time goes on.
Yes, that's right.
Well, after the pink flowers of that rhododendron arboreum back there, Peter, I can only describe these as electrifying.
Yes, this is a superb rhododendron hybrid sort of for the larger woodland garden. This is rhododendron sort of Shilsoni, which is sort of barbatum crossed with sort of Thompsoni, two sort of
Himalayan species, aren't they, those?
Oh yes, yes. So very good parents.
Is this a Cornish hybrid?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's raised by Mr. Gill at Tremau.
And he's responsible for quite a number of first-class sort of
Yes, indeed.
hybrid rhododendrons
rhododendron.
for Cornish gardens. And
That's
what
right.
about the bark, though?
Yes, so this is added feature here. The lovely sort of pinky outside layer sort of peels off
Almost like
and
tissue
reveals
paper.
the sort of grey underneath.
Yeah. Well, we've seen the pink ones and this beautiful red colour. Any other coloured rhododendrons to show me?
Yes, so there is a yellow one sort of down here. Which
Oh,
is,
yes. Yeah, see that
some
shining through the
lutescens.
branches. Well, these are smaller flowers, Peter, but at least they're of a bright colour.
Yes, Roy, this is a slightly hardier sort of rhododendron lutescens with this lovely lemon sort of yellow flowers and the sort of deeper markings sort of on the upper lobe of the flower.
I believe this is one of Wilson's collections again from his first expedition to China, Mount Omi.
Yes, this
one
is-
of only about 20 or 25 different kinds he brought back from that trip. I think he would have been proud of this.
Yes, indeed.
Bit of scorching on the leaves, is that
Yes,
any reason?
I'm afraid this plant needs a sort of sheltered corner of the garden, and here we had some trees blown down, and so the area is sort of very exposed now.
Yeah.
Major Belitho, Cornwall sticks well out into the Atlantic, right out into the wind. This must have been a very bleak place when your ancestors first came here.
Yes, it was. My great-grandfather bought a manor farm stuck out on a hillside, and there was absolutely no shelter from the winds.
What did they do about that?
Well, the first thing was to try and get some shelter, and he planted these woods all around the house, which you can see all the way around here.
Yeah.
And took a long time for them to grow because they had to face up to the stormy winds.
Yeah. But have you had problems now? They must be getting very old, these trees.
Yes, they are. They are 150 years old. And 3 winters ago, we had a terrible gale which blew down the shelter belts behind us now and have left a terrible gap.
And what can you do about that?
Well, we fortunately, the National Trust had started a replanting program, and that program was already underway.
Yeah. What sort of species of trees?
Well, basically hardwood, beech, and quite a lot of notophagus, which are much faster growing than the beech, and then a few leylandii, which of course again are very fast.
Tell me, it's really to your own father that we owe the glory of this garden today. I mean, he was a very keen plantsman, I understand.
Yes, he was. When he inherited, there was very little in the shrub line here, but he realized that he had the possibilities of making a good garden here because he had the shelter, he had the climate, and he had the soil.
Where did he get his plants from then? How did he get his plants?
Well, shortly after he inherited, he had the opportunity to take a share in Kingdon Ward's plant hunting expedition out into the Himalayas. And Kingdon Ward was in northern Burma and Assam. And where we were lucky was that it was about Kingdon Ward's most successful expedition.
And he brought back seed and plants and everything else, and your father, of course, got his share, being a shareholder in the expedition. He planted that stuff here.
Yes, that's right. He had his share, as you say, and we had a head gardener here called Albert Creek, who was a very good propagator. And he was almost the most successful propagator of the people who had seed from that expedition. With the result that a great many of the plants that Kingdon Ward sent back flowered for the first time in this garden here.
At Trengwainton. Now, how did he sort of ensure that they didn't die or get killed, and I mean, to preserve these plants for posterity? What did they do then?
Well, in a number of cases, the plants came up very freely, almost like mustard and cress. So they were planted around in various parts of the garden, but to ensure that they weren't lost if there was a disaster here. They were shared out amongst friends and with Kew Gardens, so they were spread all over the country.
So what you got, in a way, was competition to be the first with a new plant and then great collaboration to make sure that it survived.
That's right, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Many of these plants flowered here for the first time and were shown in London and received awards from the Royal Horticultural Society.
Yeah, that's marvellous. Yes.
A question all plantsmen find difficult to answer is to name your favourite plant. Well, I'm not sticking my neck out when I say that on this April day in Trengwainton, this rhododendron is mine. It's a great fountain of white against that blue sky. It's called Rhododendron Sir Charles Lemon, and it's said to be a hybrid between two wild species. Now, I have the leaves in my pocket. A hybrid between Rhododendron campanulatum and Rhododendron arboreum, subspecies Cinnamomum. And here's Sir Charles Lemon in the centre. We turn them over and you can see how Sir Charles Lemon is much richer beneath, but the shape is intermediate between the two parents. Now, apparently it was sent back as seed, collected by that great former director of Kew Gardens, Sir Joseph Hooker from Sikkim. And it's almost as if one of those great shining white Himalayan peaks has been transported into this Cornish woodland.
This may seem like an inordinately large drive, but in fact there's a very, very good reason for it. The original drive used to run on a steep slope up through these woodlands to the house. But as the trees grew and got fatter and fatter, the carriageway got narrower and narrower. And that coincided with a period in which carriages themselves became larger and more flamboyant as people became better off. So that when people came to have dinner at Trengwainton, the coachman, of course, would have had his share of the port wine from the cook. Going home became a great nightmare because the carriageway never dried out, and they found that the coachman had let the horses fly down the hill, and it became really a sort of muddy downhill slalom ride. So that about the turn of the century, they decided that they'd make this wider carriageway, which really is right down the outskirts of the property. This gave, of course, other generations of Bolithos other opportunities to garden. And when Major Simon Bolitho took over responsibility for the garden in 1956, there was a very deep culvert here which was draining the drive, and he decided to raise its base to create a very charming, shallow stream. And this, of course, provided a wonderful opportunity later on to develop an absolutely stunning water garden.
We've seen some choice rhododendrons today, Peter, but Trengwainton also has a very fine collection of camellias, of which this must be one of the most impressive.
Yes, Roy, this is a superb sort of specimen of sort of Camellia reticulata, so Captain Raws.
How old would this one be?
This was planted in the sort of 1930s.
Flowering every year like this?
No, but this is an exceptional year, I would say. So flowering so very well indeed.
It's a good story about Captain Raws, because this was introduced in about 1820 by a Captain Raws of the East India Company. And when I was in China at Kunming, home of the reticulated camellias, about 2 years ago, I met a professor who was one of the experts on this kind of camellia. And he told me that they'd lost this in China, and about 2 years previously, he'd heard from a Japanese enthusiast that he could return the plant. So they got the plant from the Japanese and they gave it a special name, a new name, a Chinese name, translated as Glorious Return. Unfortunately, it wasn't the true kind, and I was asked to bring out the real plant, which was first taken from China by Captain Raws, and I was able to do that the following year and dispatched it by post once I arrived in China. But these reticulator camellias are tender. What about hardy
Yes,
kinds?
indeed. Oh, over here, Roy, we have one of the sort of Camellia sort of japonica types called Lady Clare, and it has this superb sort of prostrate habit and these glorious sort of sort of double flowers and large glossy sort of foliage to sort of frame them.
Make a good ground cover too, I
Oh,
should
indeed,
imagine, wouldn't
yes,
it?
yes, indeed.
You know, Peter, I thought I could smell a sort of honey-like scent. It's coming from these flowers.
Yes, Roy, this is Euphorbia mellifera from the sort of Canary Islands.
It's a euphorbia. It ought to have that nice sort of milky juice. Yeah, there it
Yes,
is.
well,
Nice sort of milky sort of juice. All the euphorbias have that.
Yes, they do.
What's this
And
thing?
here on our left, we have a plant from sort of South America. This is Raphithamnus sort of cyanocarpus, sort of with these sort of lovely sort of glossy sort of foliage and the little
Well,
sort of
flowers,
lavender
aren't
flowers.
they? Those are their
Oh, yes.
flowers. You can hardly see them. They're so small.
That's right.
A good sort of violet colour crowding the branches.
Yes, they are. It's a very attractive tree.
South America, Canary Islands, and whew, look at this.
Yes, now so we're back sort of to a Chinese plant.
Gosh,
again.
yeah. Well, we started with a Chinese magnolia, and now we're sort of ending our tour with one. This is
This
what?
is Magnolia sort of cylindrica, planted in 1963. Really
Just about
splendid.
going over with the sort of brown tints on some of the petals, just sort of finishing, but it's still pretty good against that blue sky, isn't it not?
Yes.
Well, you know, Peter, I go dashing around the world in some of these mountains and difficult situations looking at plants, but it strikes me you're the lucky one because some of the world's finest plants are here on your doorstep in Trengwainton. You've seen them every day.